balanced view on politics in today's world. Based on facts, born of rationality, common sense, and logic, providing context on today's events. This is American Perspective with Rick Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to American Perspective. I am your host, Rick. Happy Labor Day for all of you who were off today. In celebration, of course, of the additional labor that we usually are partaking of in order to make this great country work. This is potentially a good day for you, may not be a good day for some, I don't know. But anyway, the point is, happy Labor Day. I had to do a little bit of work this morning, well, that's odd, Tommy. Anyway, I had to do a little bit of work this morning, no big deal, but because, it was raining a little bit here, it was raining a little bit here, not like it really, let's be honest. I live in Western Washington. It rains. Not always, but it rains. A lot. Anyway, not in terms of amount, but anyway. All right, moving on. So tonight we have Definitely Not Karen on tap for tonight's Pledge of Allegiance. So please, if you are of mind, stand, remove your hat if you're wearing one, put your hand over your heart, and join with Definitely Not Karen from Rumbleland in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I thank you, Definitely Not Karen, for submitting that wonderful rendition of the Pledge of Allegiance to us. If you would like to hear your rendition and you yourself reciting the pledge, then what you can do is you can record yourself, obviously, doing the Pledge of Allegiance in your style, and then email me that audio file to fans, F-A-N-S, at americanperspective.online. That's fans at americanperspective.online. All right, folks, let's get down to brass tacks. So apparently the Democrats, in particular the Harris campaign, may have actually kicked a hornet's nest because she went on X and posted this big, I'm going to say big, but posted this very long post with regards to what happened in Arlington. Now, for those of you who may not know, Trump was invited by the families, at least five of the families of the 13 fallen soldiers from the Biden administration disastrous pullout of Afghanistan. And he was invited to go to what is called a wreath-laying ceremony. And what ended up happening is, while they were there, apparently some of Trump's staffers, reportedly Trump's staffers, kind of got a little bit into it with the Arlington cemetery staff over the idea that the photos and videos that were being taken were going to be used for political purposes, which, by the way, is supposedly a federal offense. Now, let's just ignore the fact that Biden has done it and Obama has done it in the past. Let's just totally ignore that fact. Let's ignore the fact that the Trump campaign didn't necessarily use it for political purposes, okay? But that the families themselves had videographers there, had people taking photos there, and so on and so forth. And so what they do is, or what they did is the left started immediately attacking and saying that, Trump was doing this for the campaign. He wasn't doing it because he was honoring the families. Well, the Harris campaign picked it up and they went and posted on X about it. And a lot of people are not happy with the whole situation. Here, let me show you. And this, by the way, has been growing over the weekend. It's not just, anyway, right here in Town Hall, the Harris campaign kicked a hornet's nest by attacking Trump's visit to Arlington Cemetery. And the thing about it is that, again, there was a potential of it being, basically all it was the guy, he just wanted to, present and be there to help with the family members grieving. I mean, that's kind of what he does. He's been to several funerals before, and he's been to, even the funerals of people that he's had no effect with, i.e. this particular case. And the thing about it is a lot of these families have publicly stated that they've never once heard from the Biden administration nor the Harris administration. And those two in particular were the ones who caused the deaths of those 13. I mean, let's be honest. Yes, there was a suicide bomber in Afghanistan who did it. But the point here, though, is that neither Biden nor Harris have ever talked to some of these families. Some have even claimed that they've never heard their children's names come from the lips of Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. That, my friends, is a complete tragedy. And I think it's a total remission from the stupid, moronic Biden-Harris, Harris-Biden administration. And, these people just seem to want to, keep attacking for whatever reason. So there were a couple people, of course, that jumped on this almost immediately. You can see here, guy by the name of Guy Benson, Gold Star families invited him to be there with cameras to highlight and honor the memory of loved ones who were killed under your administration's catastrophic withdrawal. You put out a press release. These people are just so goddamn stupid. So anyway, what did she say? Well, here it is. Here's the post. And I will go ahead and read it to you because of my audio-only listeners. As Vice President, I have had the privilege of visiting Arlington National Cemetery several times. It is a solemn place, a place where we come together to honor American heroes who have made the ultimate sacrifice in service of this nation. It is not a place for politics. And yet, as was reported this week, Donald Trump's team chose to film a video there, resulting in an altercation with cemetery staff. Let me be clear, the former president disrespected sacred ground, all for the sake of a political stunt. Now, again, sorry, I'm going to digress here for a second. Just remember, Obama and Biden both have had their images and the Arlington National Cemetery used in political campaigns. Okay, so let's just leave that at that right there. She continues, this is nothing new from Donald Trump. This man who has called our fallen service members suckers and losers and disparaged Medal of Honor recipients. Okay, again, step out from that. No, he never called them suckers and losers. That's been completely debunked multiple times by many people who were physically there at the time that this claim supposedly happened. It was the Atlantic citing some unnamed source that caused all of this, which the Atlantic is straight up a propaganda media outlet for the left. And then, of course, the whole disparaged Medal of Honor recipients is bullshit, too, because he never disparaged them. All he was talking about was in comparison between the Medal of Honor recipients, who the majority of them have to have been killed in order to be awarded that medal. The vast majority, the rest are either maimed for life, or severely injured, etc., etc. So his comparison was essentially, and admittedly was a bit in poor taste, I'm going to say. His delivery of what he intended to say was completely off. And so I do agree with that part of it, but he wasn't disparaging the Medal of Honor recipients at all. People who just look for things to call him out on are the ones that are calling that. Then she continues, a man who during a previous visit to the cemetery reportedly said of fallen service members, I don't get it. What was in it for them? Okay. Again, debunked. That was all. Those two, by the way, outside of the disparaged Medal of Honor recipients, those two were his reported responses to going off in France and visiting one of the cemeteries over there, one of the World War II cemeteries there, World War I cemeteries. But anyway, she continues, this is a man who is unable to comprehend anything other than service to himself, except for the fact that, one, you have never shown up to Dover to pay respects to the fallen, and two, your buddy Biden, your boss, was looking at his watch the entire time those 13 members showed up at Dover, trying to figure out how long he was needing to be there, more than likely thinking about ice cream or some other bullshit. So anyway, sorry, I continue with her piece. If there is one thing which we as Americans can all agree, it is that our veterans, military families, and service members should be honored, never disparaged, and treated with nothing less than our highest respect and gratitude. Okay, you have never shown any respect, gratitude, or decency to these people, apparently, because you've never called them, you've never talked to them, and this is according to them. Just looking directly at those 13. Anyway, she continues, and it is my belief that someone who cannot meet this simple, sacred duty should never again stand behind, should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States of America. She says, I will always honor the service and sacrifice of all of America's fallen heroes, who made the ultimate sacrifice on behalf of our beloved nation and our cherished freedoms. I mourn them and salute them. I will never politicize them. That is a bunch of freaking horse-pucky BS. She was not there. She's never been to Dover, as far as I'm aware, to receive the bodies of those who came back from Afghanistan. She wasn't even there. And in fact, that's what a lot of the Gold Star families actually said. Here is, and I got to scroll down a little bit in this article, but this is an article in Fox News, and they actually have the posts on X from some of the folks who were the people. So Steve Nakui, who is the father of Lance Corporal Kareem Nakui, posted this video.
Vice President Harris, my name is Steve Nakui. I'm the father of Lance Corporal Kareem M. Nakui. And your administration killed my son. Deliberately in exchange for political theatrics, so you could have a final day of the evacuation coincide with September 11th. Ignoring the advice of your generals, the Doha Agreement, and countless other veterans and members of Congress. Denying the safety of the Afghans and the servicemen and women. Your choice to play politics in 2021 killed 170 Afghans, 13 U.S. service members, and wounded 45 of our service members, as well as countless Afghans. You were not at Dover for the dignified transfer. At no time have you reached out to me to offer your condolences, to offer thank you for Kareem's sacrifice and service. Not once have you honored him by saying his name, so I said it for you. You have disparaged all 13 who have lost their lives as well as their families, exhibiting your lack of gratitude by your silence. I agree with you on one thing, that a person like you should never and will never stand behind the seal of presidency. You are a DEI vice president, and contrary to our kids, the worst that America has to offer. I will pray for you, that God has mercy on your soul.
And that is just one of several. Herman Lopez, who was the father of Corporal Hunter Lopez, said, "It's been 3 years since my son was killed in action, and myself, my family, and other Gold Star families have not seen any support from you or your administration." They continue, another one continued on. Mark Schmitz, who is the father of Marine Lance Corporal Jared Schmitz, said in his video, "Why did we want Trump there? It wasn't to help his political campaign. We wanted a leader. That explains why you and Joe did not get a call." Well, technically they did. In fact, one of the Gold Star families said that they reached out to the White House to ask for them to attend as well, but there wasn't even a response from the White House. So, yeah. Darren Hoover, who was the father of Staff Sergeant Taylor Hoover, said, "In keeping with the reverence and respect that is given to all members of our military that are buried there, we invited President Trump. We are the ones who asked for the video and pictures to be taken at the tomb of the unknown soldier." Yeah. Hoover also added that Trump has been there for us from the very beginning and criticized Harris for playing politics over the incident. It continued on. So, yeah. And these were all posted on Trump's X account, of course. And these people, they asked for it. J.D. Vance actually even said that President Trump was there at the invitation of families whose loved ones died because of your incompetence. Why don't you get off social media and go launch an investigation into their unnecessary deaths? This is not going very well for them. By the way, I took a look, and granted it was only a quick perfunctory look, but I took a look at Arlington. I think it's Arlington Cemetery. Yeah, arlingtoncemetery.mil, short for military. And they have a listing of acceptable use policies for video and photography. Now, granted, I was skimming through it for the most part right before I came on, but the one thing that they make perfectly clear in that document is that family members and those who are there, whether it's photographers, videographers, if they are there for the family, those family members come first. And those videographers come first before any other media that may be in attendance. They make it very, very clear that the family members of these fallen soldiers are given in place the utmost respect. So, in this particular case, the staffer of the Arlington National Cemetery should be questioned about this entire thing, because assuming that everything is true, that the family members are the ones that had the videographer, the photographer, etc., then that means that they're going away. They're going away from their own printed policies. And you can check all that out. But apparently she's taking some serious hits here with this. And whoever her staffer was that wrote that, because let's be honest with you, I don't think that is so coherent and cogent and clear, concise. I just don't see Kamala Harris actually being able to type all that because of the way she does. One of the Carolyn Leavitt, who is, of course, the Trump campaign's national press secretary, posted on X that Kamala Harris has bragged about being the last person in the room with Joe Biden when they decided on their terrible Afghanistan withdrawal plan. She has never said their names. She has never reached out to the families. For this alone, Kamala does not deserve to be elected. Kamala has already proven that she would be a dangerously incompetent commander-in-chief. Well, it's not just the Gold Star families that have jumped in on this. Tulsi Gabbard, who apparently was there. Now, I wasn't aware of this, but apparently she was there. So this article here in Red State, if you take a look, Tulsi Gabbard sets CNN straight on Trump's attendance at Arlington's cemetery ceremony. So here, she was on CNN up against Donna Bash. And I guess the CNN State of the Union was the site, or the show. But here, let's take a listen to this.
I do want to move on to what is happening with regard to controversy after the former president visited Arlington National Cemetery this week. His campaign took photos and video of him in Section 60, where veterans of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan are buried, used it in a campaign video. The Army also says that Trump staffers abruptly pushed aside a cemetery official who tried to enforce Arlington's rules prohibiting political activities. I know you were with Trump at least earlier in that day at the tomb of the unknown soldier. Did you witness the altercation at Section 60?
I was there from the beginning with the laying of the wreaths with the family members, the Gold Star family members, and some of the survivors of that terrorist attack in that disastrous withdrawal from Afghanistan. I was with them at Section 60, and what I saw was a very grave and somber remembrance and honoring of those lives that were lost. And I saw President Trump spending time at the invitation of these Gold Star families with them. He was there for a few hours. I did not see or hear about any kind of altercation until something came out in the news later on. The families were there grieving alongside President Trump, and it was a very special moment to really remember their names, remember their memories, and understand the true cost of war and the consequences of the decisions that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden made in the execution of that withdrawal.
Yeah, and it is very clear that the former president was invited in his personal capacity, as you said, by a family of one of the service members who was killed about 2 years ago during the withdrawal from Afghanistan.
It was 3 years ago.
3 years ago.
3 years ago to the day on August 26th.
Yes, 3 years ago. The question is about the federal law and Arlington's rules that prohibit partisan or political activities at national cemeteries.
Okay, hold up. Donna Bash just freaking cleared the argument. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I didn't preview this clip before we came on but she just cleared it. She just stated Trump was there in a personal capacity. That right there, that should end the argument right there. There's no political ploy here. Wow. Now she's going to she even though she just said that, she just made that statement, and now she's going to continue on with this press, I guess. Let's continue.
And the military and also other members of other families who are buried right near there are upset about the campaign filming it and posting the video online. Do you believe that was appropriate?
I checked with the campaign on this question, and they have exchanges with the officials at Arlington Cemetery. They were approved to bring a camera there to document this historic and momentous day that should not be forgotten by any American. And to have a former president there and joining these Gold Star families, I know President Trump wanted to share that with others, especially given the fact that President Biden and Harris, I heard, were invited by some of these family members. They not only didn't come, they didn't even respond to that invitation. And now to have Kamala Harris put this statement out yesterday saying that she stands with these families, she stands with the military and with veterans, you only have to look at the response that came from the Gold Star families of these 13 service members, of how offended they were by that statement, given she has not made any effort, not on that third anniversary or any other time, to call them directly to offer her condolences and even apologies for their decisions that led to the loss of their loved ones.
Do you think that the campaign will release that communication that you're talking about? Because the Army is saying very clearly that they broke the rules because it was clearly put out online, pictures, video, meant as a part of his campaign.
I thought they already had. I was informed that they had come to an agreement. They could bring a camera there. And as far as I know, and the public statements I've seen from the Army, is that the matter is closed.
So there you have it. This entire situation is being blown out of proportion because of the fact that the left wants to keep it in the spotlight. Yeah. So basically, once again, folks, this whole Arlington National Cemetery thing and it's all just a bunch of hoo-ha. The leftist morons who can't seem to understand that the families wanted him there, that they already had all these clearances. And by the way, those you can contact them, the Arlington Cemetery press office. They have a press office in order to get all of this stuff approved. It's not like this is something that's brand new. Really, really, really starting to get tired of these leftist morons sitting here and trying to do whatever they can to go after Donald Trump when all of it is a lie. All of it isn't true. All of it is just made up bullshit for the most part. There might be some indications on some things, but seriously, come on. All Trump was trying to do was honor the families that asked him to be there because of the fact, and I'll bet this is true too, because of the fact that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris never bothered to do so. I mean, this is just another disgusting attack by the left. Okay, let me tell you really quick before I move on to my next subject. Let me go ahead and tell you about my wonderful logo gear store. Here, before I put the banner up, take a look. This is one of my t-shirts with one of my versions of logo. I've got 3 versions of my logo, and you can check them all out at store.americanperspective.online. That's store.americanperspective.online. And you can go there and check out, I've got t-shirts, hoodies, crew neck sweatshirts. I've got women's or racer back tank tops. I've got unisex tank tops. I also have links to where you can go and get the Constitution of the United States, the Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution. I also have links to my older logo gear store. So yeah, go and check it out. store.americanperspective.online. That's store.americanperspective.online. Bam is asking about something about my wonderful whiskey warriors, my wonderful Rumble whiskey warriors. I've got wonderful whiskey warriors everywhere on all of my outlets, whether it's Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, although YouTube doesn't get a lot of traction, and X. They're all over there. And yeah, Jeannie over on Facebook. Yeah, I've got friends, or well, I used to have friends that have dropped me because of my political beliefs. But anyway, so there we go. Oh, did I? Wait. I'll address that later. Anyway, so there we go. Nana of JJS. I highly recommend a Whiskey Warriors tube top gator. Yeah, well, anyway. Yeah, so, I mean, this is like a non-starter, but they're going to hack on it and go after it as much as they possibly can. Just like these folks do, and by these folks, I'm trying to be nice about the Democrat, leftist, Marxist, communist, regime hating or loving, if it's a totalitarian regime. Well, these folks have got their marching orders, and now the New York Times, which is a complete leftist propaganda outlet organization, is now starting to say the quiet part out loud. What am I talking about? Well, here in PJ Media, the New York Times wonders if the Constitution is dangerous. So here's the problem, people. They hate the Constitution. They hate it because it stops them from doing the things that they want to do. Well, New York Times book critic Jennifer Szalai, S-Z-A-L-A-I. I don't even know how to pronounce that. She epitomizes this in the headline of her latest piece, "The Constitution is Sacred. Is it also dangerous?" Yeah. I just don't even know what, I honestly don't even know what to say about this, because this is their mindset. This is what they are thinking about. Now, I went ahead and signed up for a free account just to get this article. Here's the article in the New York Times right here, and it's through the Critic's Notebook, and she starts off with this wow. I mean, she starts off the entire article with a fallacy. Yeah, let me show you. So right here, she says the United States Constitution is in trouble. After Donald Trump lost the 2020 election, he called for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. Now, that statement, as always, is taken completely out of context. What he was discussing, and I am telling you as a constitutional student, okay, I am not a scholar, but I am a student of the Constitution. I can tell you that in this document, there is not one conversation. There is not one statement. There is not one singular direction as to how to come back or combat a falsified election. There is not one iota of a inference as to how to correct an election that was done with possible nefarious activities. There's not one single instance or example or even like, hey, If you find that your elections are fraudulent, just, throw them out. There's not one single inkling of that anywhere in the U.S. Constitution. And the reason for that is because our founding fathers actually believed that people would be essentially doing the right thing because of the fact that they believed that the majority of people would be honorable, would be following a religious tenets, and be honorable, ethical, morally correct, have integrity. That's what our founding fathers believed. In fact, John Adams clearly stated that the Constitution was only for a religious and moral people. That's the start of this article, is her taking his statement out of context and not understanding that the Constitution has nothing in it to tell us how we are to recover from an unethical election cycle, which is what we had in 2020. Now, she continues here. Outraged critics denounced him for threatening a document that is supposed to be sacrosanct. By announcing his desire to throw off constitutional constraints in order to satisfy his personal ambitions, Trump was making his authoritarian inclinations abundantly clear. Again, that is all false. That is all completely false. She is sitting here talking about the very thing that has nothing in the Constitution, the very thing which is a screwed up election. The very thing that it. So anyway, she continues, it's no surprise then that liberals charge Trump with being a menace to the Constitution. Well, your premise, the entire premise is already thrown out. I've already debunked this. So the reason why liberals believe that Trump is a menace to the Constitution is because he is simply calling out the failures of the Constitution with regards to 2020. Now, they're also talking about his presidency, and the prospect of his reelection have also generated another very different argument, that Trump owes his political assent to the Constitution, making him the beneficiary of a document that is essentially anti-democratic. It is anti-democratic. It's called a republic, not democracy. In fact, our founding fathers abhorred democracy because they knew that a pure democracy, which is what the popular vote essentially is, would demoralize and devolve into what is essentially mob rule. That's what a pure democracy is. This is part of the reason why they did not want it, because they knew that that was going to be a problem. They had studied previous democracies, such as the Greeks and the Romans, that were democracies, and they decided against it for our fledgling nation. Now, she also calls the Constitution increasingly dysfunctional. Well, it isn't increasingly dysfunctional to those of us who follow it and understand it. She continues on talking about how Trump became president in 2016 after losing the popular vote, but winning the Electoral College, which is part of Article 2. He appointed 3 justices to the Supreme Court, which is part of Article 3, 2 of whom were confirmed by senators representing just 44% of the population, according to Article 1. Now, of course, she continues on with those 3 justices helping to overturn Roe v. Wade, a reversal with which most Americans disagreed. That's actually not true. That is actually not true. Most of Americans do agree that Roe v. Wade should have been reversed. Even RGB, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg believed that Roe v. Wade was decided incorrectly. So, and then she points to a book by Erwin Chemerinsky, who is worried about opinion polls showing a dramatic loss of faith in democracy. Okay, so let me back up for just a second here and understand this is really, really clear. The popular vote has never been the vehicle by which the president is elected. It is the Electoral College. That's part of why they are trying to move, the founders were trying to move away from the whole idea of a pure democracy and move into and create what is known as a Republican form of government, which they guarantee in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution. This whole idea by these Democrats that the popular vote has anything to do with the election of the president it literally has no bearing. No bearing whatsoever. And what they've done over time by sitting here and comparing the popular vote to the Electoral College and saying things like, well, the popular vote picked, somebody else than who was in. Doesn't matter. It is completely irrelevant under our Constitution. The Electoral College is what picks the president. End of story. So, continuing on here, she continues to kind of talk about the Constitution in terms of how it was built. And here you can see she talks about in 1787, when 55 delegates convened in Philadelphia to revise the Articles of Confederation, they ended up embarking on a project that was much bigger in scope. As Americans are taught in history class, the delegates drafted a new document establishing a national government consisting of 3 branches: legislative, judiciary, and executive, each functioning as a check on the others. Now, here's where it gets really leftist vision. The delegates were all white and they were all men, but they nevertheless diverged on what they deemed to be an intractable issue, which was slavery. Okay. She continues in this piece, though several states had already passed abolition statutes, nearly half the delegates were slaveholders. The Constitution was thus born of compromise, with the enslavers getting the better end of the deal. To determine representation in the House and the Electoral College, the 3/5 compromise allowed slave states to count 3 out of every 5 people held in bondage, none of whom, needless to say, could vote. And the Fugitive Slave Clause stipulated that even when enslaved peoples escaped to free states, they would never be free. Okay, now what she is talking about here is true to a point. The reason why the 3/5 compromise was done that way is because of the fact that they were attempting to find a level of equality when it came to population. See, at the time that this was going on, the northern free states were populated by people who could actually vote at the time. Now, was it right that that was the case? Today we say no. But at the time of the whole situation where they were building this thing and creating this thing, that wasn't the generally accepted practice. And so when we look at history through the lens of the modern future here, we can't necessarily second guess or Monday morning quarterback the decisions that were made. What happened here was essentially, yes, the idea that they allowed the slave states to count 3 out of every 5 people, meaning 3 out of every 5 slaves, to be able to determine their population density because the population of the slave owners was smaller than the northern states. And the slave states, or the southern states in this particular case, wanted equal representation. They were afraid that if it was done by population, which, believe it or not, this is the argument that the left continually has with the idea that places such as Wyoming shouldn't have the same, quote, equal right to to elections as, say, the populous state of Florida. Now, if you look at the way that the Electoral College is broken up, in particular, the Electoral College is based on two things. One is the 2 senators from every state, which I've explained on this program was done long prior to, the idea that the senators were actually voted on by the people. The original Senate was made up of representatives from the state legislatures. Okay? So the thing about this is that the 3/5 compromise was a compromise not necessarily born out of slavery, but born out of the idea that the southern states wanted equal representation to the northern states. It just so happens that it happened to deal with slavery at the time. Because think about this too. Women were also not allowed to vote back then. So it wasn't just the idea of men and women, or black or white, or any other race or white. You know, also back in the day too, if you don't realize, that you had to be a landowner in order to vote. That was part of the Constitution as well. Not everybody could vote because you had to be a landowner back then. So, she continues on talking about how these compromises were so damning. The abolitionist William Garrison considered the compromises so damning as to make the Constitution a covenant with death and an agreement with hell. But Frederick Douglass, of course, maintained the opposite, that slavery in the United States could only be upheld by claiming the Constitution does not mean what it says, which it says all men are created equal. I mean, sorry, that's the Declaration of Independence. But the Constitution basically states that, you know, it was the framework for the foundation of our government, and that eventually that everybody with the principles of the Declaration of Independence would be tied together in the idea that everyone would be, of course, a free person. So, yeah, basically what they are claiming is that the Douglass shared, Frederick Douglass shared Abraham Lincoln's view, which, by the way, Lincoln freed the slaves. He's the one that did the whole thing with the Emancipation Proclamation and was a Republican. But Abraham Lincoln's view, which was recognizing that the Constitution is the promise of universal freedom, which it does. It is. She continues here where she talks about how it has instructions on how to thwart the promise of universal freedom. She says that the words in the Constitution's preamble, which is "we the people," that is a seemingly ringing endorsement for popular governance and a distrust of democracy embedded in the rest of the document. That's because they didn't want democracy. See, this is part of the problem. This is part of the problem right here. The Democrats seem to think that democracy is the end-all, be-all, holy grail of governments. And they don't recognize, nor do they attempt to even discuss the fact that pure democracy, which is what they are looking for, does nothing more than fall into the trap of mob rule. That's simply it. And yet they seem to sit here and think that, oh, well, if we go to a pure democracy, we're going to be better off. We're not. What ends up in a pure democracy basically rolls out in the fact that California, Illinois, New York, Texas, and Florida, those 5 states, based on their population, can swing the entire country, regardless of what any of the other states want. And the reason being is because of the fact that they are the most populous states. This is the exact reason why the 3/5 compromise occurred, why the entire Constitution is built off of the idea of equalness and fairness, not only for the majority, but also for the minority as well. It's these kind of arguments that that these lefties are all trying to shove down our throats. And because of the fact that we are not learned, or learned, however you want to pronounce it, on the Constitution and its inception and how this is supposed to be, okay, this is why these people can get away with these arguments. This is not the point of the Constitution. The Constitution and our country was not designed as a democracy. We are a republic for a reason. And yes, definitely not Karen. I agree. It is the cities, not the state. I'm just using the state as the point of being the most, the population within them. But anyway. So all of this stuff is, she continues, and if you get the opportunity to go ahead and read the piece, that's great. But she continues here, and she keeps talking about this lofty ideal, the lofty principle, hypothetical cover for what's going on. No, you have to look, in order to understand the Constitution of the United States, you need to let go of this idea that there is some sort of a utopia with a pure democracy. And that is entirely wrong. There is no utopian, distant future with pure democracy. It will all boil down to mob rule. It will be whatever the people in the cities want versus the rural areas, in this particular case here in the U.S., it will be whatever the people in the cities want to do. So when you're talking to these people in the cities and they're telling you about, oh, well, you know what? Oh, the Green New Deal they're talking about cow farts. Just think AOC. Just think about AOC when you're thinking about these urban dwellers who have this grandiose idea of making sure that the farmers, who make the crops, who make the food that we eat on a daily basis, those soybeans that these nincompoops freaking eat all the time, they have to grow someplace. And they need fertilizer. And we can either get it from natural forms, which of course comes off of cow poop, or we can make it out of petroleum products, which is the more common way of doing it. See, the problem here is that these people seem to think that they fully understand the Constitution, and most of them haven't even read it in the context of the historical significant times. They haven't bothered to read the Federalist Papers. They haven't bothered to read the Anti-Federalist Papers. They haven't bothered to read or look up the words in Noah Webster's 1828 dictionary in order to understand the context of a word as it was said and meant back in the day when the document was potentially written and understood. We've gone away from all of this in our civics classes because of the idea of this grandiose idea that America is a democracy. We are not. we are at best a representative republic. And because of the fact that we don't have a pure and clear understanding of this document, the Constitution of the United States, and what the framers were thinking about while they argued back and forth about all of the different articles, and later on, just 2 short years later, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution. It is because of all of this that these people on the left are able to easily usurp the minds of the young and say, you know what? The popular vote is what the president needs to be voted on. No, it's the Electoral College. And the reason why the Electoral College exists, I don't know how many times I keep having to fight with these people over on social media with regards to the Electoral College. The reason it's there is because it created and helped to create a representative republic. And the whole idea that, just because our representatives are over in DC, this was another argument that I had with somebody on social media, that our representatives going over to DC, okay, can essentially decide on anything in our laws. That's not what a republic is. A republic is that, yes, you are a representative of the public when you go off to DC to make up our laws, but those laws are constrained within a certain framework by the Constitution. See, our representatives are not allowed to just go and create whatever laws they want. That is a fallacy. That is a misnomer. The only things that they are supposed to create laws on, which this is part of where the 10th Amendment comes into play, that last line of defense of the fence that was put in just 2 years after the document was written. That 10th Amendment, which basically states that if it isn't stated within the document as being the specific purview of the federal government and therefore denied to the states, everything else that is not completely outlined in this document is the responsibility of the states, which is where abortion fell, folks. That's where abortion is supposed to fall. And yes, Amy, that is the principle of what's known as federalism. So also, too, just really quickly, I saw this other article. There's 2 things that happened in California, just really quick before I sign off for the evening. The 2 things that happened in California, one, and honestly, that whole no tax on tips thing that Kamala Harris reportedly grabbed from Donald Trump and was like, have been saying, oh no, we've wanted to do this all along, even though it was her vote on the Inflation Inducing Act, I'm being facetious with that, that caused the federal government to start taking a closer look at taxes on tips. But California Democrats vote down a no tax on tips bill. So if you honestly, and it was proposed by Republicans, by the way. So if you honestly believe that the Democrats are going to go along with Kamala Harris's suggestion that, yeah, I support no tax on tips. Yeah, the Democrats aren't going to go for it. I'm going to tell you that right now. California is like the Democrat haven. And so California, if you want to know what's going to happen, just look at California first. And secondly, and this one actually I'm really kind of surprised about, but secondly, the California State Capitol apparently had a bill that was proposed. It was a pair of bills that were proposed for reparations, and both of them were shelved. Both of them were shelved. And the Democrat state senator, Stephen Bradford, says that they were not put up for a vote because they thought that Gavin Newsom was going to veto them. Yeah. So, yeah. So all of you Democrats who think that all of you leftist morons out there who are voting Democrat who think that the Democrats are going to support these things, yeah, they're not. They're lying to you just like they lie to everybody else. They're lying to you completely. All right, folks. Got a last minute. Thank you, Bam. Bam 1356 over on Rumble says, thanks, Whiskey, for being on tonight. Happy Labor Day, Whiskey Warriors. Well, happy Labor Day to you as well, Bam. All right, folks, that wraps it up for me for tonight. Do me a favor, if you haven't already, head on over to rumble.com, get yourself an account. It is free. And once you are there, search up the American Perspective channel. And when you do, make sure you hit that green follow button. You can be notified every time I go live. Also, too, if you are already over on Rumble and are signed in, make sure you hit that thumbs up button. Hit all of those likes and thumbs up and everywhere else, all of the other places, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube or X for me as well, because all of that helps to get the program essentially further up and noticed. One other thing is I will be here tomorrow night, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern time, right here on American Perspective. And we will see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Labor Day. Good night, everybody.
The previous broadcast was produced and is owned by Active Eye Media LLC. All rights reserved.